What up, fight fans? So it's Sunday morning, and I wanted to briefly touch up on the fight from last night, or actually two fights. Obviously, the one with Gennady Golovkin and Marco Antonio Rubio, but more notably, the Nonito Donaire and Marcus Walters fight that I think ushered in a new monster in the featherweight division as Marcus Walters obliterates Nonito Donaire, and even to the class of Nonito Donaire, he gave Walters his props. He's like, yo, he beat the shit out of me. He knocked me the fuck out. And Walters was a guy I had not seen much of, but I had seen just some fights in the Darchinian fight prior to that. I just looked at the size, his jab, and just some of the things that he was able to do for the lack of experience he had against like big name opponents. And going into this fight with Nonito Donaire, he's back training with his pops, and amended that relationship. So you think that would be beneficial to him going into this fight. And I think Robert Garcia was still working with him, but like he was like the second man in charge. But from the onset, man, Walters was just I think what I thought going into this, I gave Nonito a chance, and I think it was the end of the second round, or I think it was the second, where Nonito right at the very end lands a monster left hook that looked like it hurt Walters, but from that point on, it was all Walters, and he just, like Nonito said to himself, man, like he beat the shit out of him, man. He just applied a lot of pressure, was landing the jab really hard as the fight progressed, and from that point, I think like all the shots Walters was landing was affecting Donaire, and Donaire was landing shots too, man. He was I would say for relative to the opponent he was facing, he looked better than he did in the Darchinian fight. I think he looked a lot sharper. It's just this guy is just a monster, man. And I'm thinking of fights that this guy could potentially have with, the Santa Cruzes of the world and the Gonzalez's. But on a personal note, one of my peoples is Jamaican, and I'm hitting him up. I'm like, yo, you got a star in your stable now, son. And he's like, what? And, I sent him the link to the fight, and he was just like, yo. So, in a way, that's kind of dope, at least on a personal side for me. But Walters is a guy to be on the look for, man. And as it looks right now, he could be fighting Lomachenko next year, and that's a ridiculous fight. Different style matchup, and you got somebody very experienced, and a guy who's in Lomachenko, who's dealt with a big puncher, a rough and tough guy like a Salido, but Walters presents a whole nother set of problems based on his skill set. But congrats to Walters, and we'll have to see what happens with Donaire, man. I don't want to be quick to say that he should retire. I think he even said, he was like, this guy was just too big for me. And does that mean he's gonna go back down to 122? Can he even make 122 now? It's gonna be tough to tell at this point, but we'll have to wait and see. And obviously, the main event with Triple G Gennady Golovkin making his debut in California at the StubHub Center against Marco Antonio Rubio. Now, prior to the fight, Rubio didn't make weight, came in heavy, and the idea was he was gonna not make the weight and just, I guess, have that extra weight to absorb, whatever punishment that he was going to be taking from Golovkin. But even from the beginning, man, I didn't think Rubio had much of a chance. And right from the beginning, Golovkin just really just put the pressure right from the beginning. And I think, I don't know if it was Max Kellerman or somebody said that, some fighters take time to figure out their opponent, and then you get at them. And with Golovkin, it's like you gotta right away, man. You gotta figure this guy out, because taking Golovkin out of his pace is I've seen as like the most difficult thing. And once he just unloads on you, man, I mean, I think people got to look beyond the power. Is he sets his punches up, and the argument is made that he's easy to hit, but a lot of old school boxers will tell you this, is that, and trainers, is that there's ways to bring a guy in to like give you the perception that you're easy to hit, but then look what's on the receiving end. That's what's always ignored. It's easier said than done when you got a guy who's maybe not so much of a power puncher, but then you got a guy who's very balanced, very hard hitting, and knows his distance, and knows the distance to land those shots and make them land effectively. You're dealing with a guy who's just more than a brawler, and I think people are starting to pick up on that. And from this point, man, he is in line to fight the winner of the potential Cotto Canelo fight. And there's talks now, I think he might fight Martin Murray in February, which I guess would be a stay busy fight, but a quality opponent. So from that point, they're saying he might want to fight 4 times this year. And even for somebody who's 32, that's a lot, man. But he's in line to fight either Cotto or Canelo next year, and I think either one of those guys could be the one to really put Golovkin into that star status. Because I think the smartest thing Golovkin did was move to the United States, because now he's in the limelight of the bigger end of professional boxing, as far as how it's televised and how it's received, in the United States, and getting the big fights, because now he's really in everybody's face. And I think he's a guy that you're going to be probably seeing, being mentioned on ESPN and things of that nature. But there's going to be criticism of him still, because, when you get a guy who's that good and he's just derailing these guys, there's going to be people who nitpick little things here and there. Now, interesting point. During the telecast, the HBO telecast, Jim Lampley said that Andre Ward's lawyer sent notice that, he will fight Gennady Golovkin. But I'm one that is saying that, I think that fight's going to happen, but lucratively, he's potentially looking at fights with Canelo and Cotto right in front of him. And why are you going to jump into a fight with Ward just yet? And I think Ward knows that too, but I think Ward's trying to be slick and kind of put the ball in Gennady's court, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think that fight's going to happen, honestly, till 2016, because I think Golovkin for I think the most of 2015 is going to just go through the steps of becoming the lineal middleweight champion of the world, which by the end of the year he probably potentially could be. But I mean, that's really all I got right now, man. I mean, it was, the fight went as long as I expected for the most part. I thought it would go like maybe 3-4 rounds, in hindsight. But I think, more so than that fight, I think the big story was coming out of the Walters Donaire fight, because I think Walters now stakes his claim at featherweight, and that division is stacked, man. I mean, the fights that could potentially happen there, and also adding the whole Top Rank and Golden Boy situation where they're working together. It's now we're gonna start to see some crazy fights. So that's pretty much, man. So as I always say, subscribe, hit the links, and I'll be back with you soon.